So here we are again. Now I had hoped to get a couple of tiny little builds in before the holidays, and once again that's gone out the window. Partly my fault, fanning about, but it is a busy time of year. While I'm here, I want to thank everybody I bumped into and came up and said hello at Telford. It's half the reason why I go. It's great talking to people face to face about this hobby, something I don't get much chance of where I live. Talking to Telford, I go all that way, and what did I come back with? And I do it every year. When I come back from Telford, I'm full of regrets, thinking, why didn't I buy this? Why didn't I buy that? Every year, the same. Maybe next year I'll go for 2 days. Then I won't have that problem. So, as you've all probably gathered from the thumbnail, I love these. I think Matchbox were onto a thing way back when, and I don't understand why other companies don't follow suit. It's a great idea. Tank vehicle with a bit of a diorama and some figures. I don't get it. I don't get why it's not being copied. And thankfully the Matchbox kits aren't too bad. For their age, they're pretty good, especially their figures. Now some are better than others, and what I mean by that is that, say like for instance, I think of the Comic Tank, the diorama's very basic, very poor from what I can remember. I'm sure somebody's going to correct me. And then you had the Sherman tank going over the bridge. So some were better than others. I want to thank all my subscribers and people who contribute to this channel. It's very much appreciated, and people who give the thumbs up as well. Without that, this channel goes nowhere and could die a death quite easily. I only produce this stuff because of the interest out there. Now for the new year, I've got a couple of builds that I want to jump onto, and they're different this time. So these are new tooled kits. One in particular I'm itching to start, so I may make a start before the holidays. So let's get on and see what I did with this tiny little kit. Roy Huxley's artwork? Another great artist called Roy. Now I do like the look of this scheme, but unfortunately the diorama wouldn't suit it. There are differences in the end build compared to this illustration. These decals or decals do look fresh considering the age of this kit. Now I don't remember mauve coloured instructions, but the old brain is on its way out. It does look like a very poor photocopy. Colour chart info. 2 schemes. As I said, the eastern front one looks very nice and would have been my first choice. So I wanted to take a look at the tracks first, and at this scale the detail is pretty good and not overly thick. Let's take a look at the plastic parts. The second frame. Now I am very tempted to replace these leaves with paper ones or something else, but we are here to build straight from the box. Now Matchbox figures were the best in my opinion, back then. It's just a damn pity about that stupid pose. Now that's a better pose, that's more like it. Now the base is a bit crude looking, and I'll try and improve it without creating something new. Looks like I've got an optional part here in the box, maybe a third figure? So all the parts are cleaned up and ready to glue up. The only thing I've added is the hole in the barrel. I'm going to add the tracks next, and I've been toying with the idea of removing these pin release marks and whether or not it's worth it in this scale. But first I wanted to see if I could glue this material with Tamiya Extra Thin, and thankfully it does a great job. So you can see I tried to cut out those pin marks and made a real mess of the track. And from that I've decided to knock the idea on the head with the other track. So I'll thread the tab through the slot, I'll leave it unglued for now, and then attach this track to the wheels. Yuck. I'll have to add some realism to this track. I'm not going to get away with it looking like this. So I'm going to glue the bottom of the track first and then let that set. With that set, I need to add some sag to the top of the tracks. Now there are probably several ways of doing this, but I'm going to use blue tack to hold the track in position and then add the glue to the top return rollers. So while that's drying, I'll start on the upper construction. I filled in the 2 gaps with plastic card. Overkill, I know. Now because I want to paint the gun separately, I'll leave it off for now. Talking about leading up the garden path, there was some confusion here. Well, for me anyway. This blanket, I thought, was glued to the rear. But the illustration part looks different. And looking at the finished picture of the assembled kit, it shows a blanket fixed on the inside and a set of footsteps where the item 30 is supposed to be glued. Confused? I am. So I was forced to look at photographs of the real thing. All these pictures of the Desert Wasp varied. The only thing that seemed constant was that there should have been an exhaust box at the rear where these steps are. Also, I had a hard time finding photographs of the jerry cans strapped to the side, but I must admit I didn't spend a lot of time looking. So in conclusion to all this waffle, I'm adding an exhaust box made from scratch to the back and the blanket I shall place inside. I'm also sticking with adding the jerry cans as per instructions, rightly or wrongly. And while we're talking of this area, I've replaced the kit's brackets with some brass rod. The plastic parts are far too thick. The base next, and a mute point, I keep alluding to this, is that the final illustration has slight variations to what the parts in the box have to offer. So I'm going to start by sanding the surface of this dry bed with a very coarse sanding sponge. After cleaning the crap out, I need to create a concave look on each plate. Now this is a tedious task, but I need to help this kit part out. So onto the painting stage, and I'm going to add a shadow colour first, black with a little bit of brown added. Next is one of these, both the same XF59, but look different when viewed from below. So I'll think I'll use the one on the right. I'll pick out all the other detailed areas with a brush. Now I don't have to be too neat here, as a wash and a highlight colour will help tighten everything up. I hope. Next are the transfers, and they don't look like they're hiding any horrors. So I've dipped them in warm water for a few seconds, and I'll just add a little bit of microsol to the surface. I've then sealed everything in with a satin varnish, ready to apply my dark wash. So the wash I'm going to use is a custom mix of Tamiya black and brown panel wash. And I'm using white spirits to clean up and blend in this wash. With the wash dry, I'll add some highlights with a big, daft, soft brush. So I'm picking out the dry, cruddy bits at the top here. The thicker the paint, the better for dry brushing. Try and take as much off as possible. I think personally the smaller the scale, the more contrast you need to make the subject stand out, even though that's not realistic. The figure's next, and I've added a white base coat, ready for the brushwork. Now I did try showing the painting technique, but I kept knocking the camera and my big head kept getting in the way. If you want to see how I paint tiny figures, maybe take a look at the Tamiya Bowfighter build or the other Matchbox Diorama build. So I'll start with a light relevant colour in the form of a very light wash. Then I'll leave that to dry thoroughly. Then a second mid-tone colour or the relevant colour is applied as another wash. You can see the colour getting richer and the wash collating in all those recessed areas. So the last thing to do is to pull all this together with a panel wash. So onto the base. I've added a white coat to help with the washes. Now for the palm tree, this needs some work. Isn't as good as I first thought. It's all very one-dimensional. And I really could do with twice as many parts as we have here. So as much as I didn't want to add anything more than the kit has to offer, I need to help these parts along. They desperately need it. First thing I'm going to do is cut the leaves free. Then bend them into shape. So next I have to devise something to fix these loose leaves. A small ball of milliput. So a small ball of milliput will be used for the leaves to attach to. I've glued the leaves on and I've added some texture to that milliput blob. Now it's not perfect, looking more like a deformed A400M prop, but it's a vast improvement on how we were supposed to use the parts. Back to the base, and I'm going to use washes here and let the surface detail, hopefully, do the rest. So the first wash is Iraqi sand. Now I'm starting off light and will work up darker if needed. A tan earth will be the next wash. Now that looks like a better colour. Next the dry bed, and I'll start by wetting the surface and then flood the area with a khaki wash. I'll leave that to dry and see if I need to darken it or tone it down. Now that it's dry, I'm not really happy with those highlighted edges of the dry bed, a little too yellow. So I'm using a thicker wash to darken or tone down those edges. I'll let that dry. So this is the thing to watch out for. You can see how much the colour has changed when the paint's dried. Happy I've lost those bright edges. I'll try again. Prepping the surface with water once again. So this mix is a lot more neutral. And has to work this time. You only get so many goes with washes. That's better. So onto the palm tree, which has been given a coat of Tamiya white. Once again the surface is prepped with water. So I'm going to start with a light grey for the trunk and then onto the leaves, as I want the lower leaves to look dead or wilting away. Next, a very light green. A better way to wet this area is to submerge it in water and then shake the excess off. A darker green. This will be added more to the top of the leaves. Then lastly is this green, added just to the base of the leaves. With the palm finished, I can put all this together. I'm going to leave the figures till last. Now I like these old Matchbox dioramas. Some of course are better than others, but it's the detailed figures that bring these little dioramas to life. So I hope you like what I've done with this, and there will be more of these of course in the future, he says full of confidence. So I want to thank you for watching, and I do hope to see you later for the next build.